that too. Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Do we
is
have like the
terrible because people lie.
Oh.
They're like, "Oh yeah, I'll bring my laptop." No, I want to show off my really awesome desktop, and then
Oh, and then they
I've
bring their
had
friends just to play with their
yeah,
desktops.
and I've actually had a side of the room blow out because there were
Oh
desktops.
no.
I've been to like two events where that's happened, where it was pretty bad. Anyway, yeah,
we
Ryan,
have like
sorry, I think you're saying something.
all right, we have like the opposite problem where our administration kind of just lets us do whatever,
Oh.
Yeah.
and then we've had our most recent one. We showed up and it was on a weekend, and they
Uh huh.
didn't send anyone to unlock the door for us. Like we told them
Uh,
ahead of time, they knew everything was happening, and then like we called them ahead of time, and then they just don't send buildings and grounds over. Um,
and then so they just kind of like you don't have to check up with them, but then like
yeah, but then it's
people
like
just don't show up.
the people just don't
That's,
show up. Like we get
yeah.
there, we don't get any help at all. So we can go both ways.
Yeah, I guess. Uh, but I mean, yeah, like things like power and internet, and even like how far the bathroom is, or what is I totally forgot. Like how people finding the room, all that kind of stuff is like things you don't really consider. So like my biggest
Lighting.
recommendation, yeah, lighting, definitely lighting, staging. Let me think. It's like they're so silly that I forget about them. Like, oh, after the event's done, you just purge it from your mind because it's like the wackiest things eating away at you for months.
Where the Ethernet
But
ports are in the damn
yes,
room.
yeah, that's true.
I know ours was
Um,
on the second floor, so we actually had to run a wire downwards to the
wow,
floor.
it's quite amazing. So yeah, these are like I think I just recommend if you have like a dedicated event planner at your school that you had to talk to, like just follow up at least once a week or like 3 times a week or just as many times as you can get to him. Because I think the big issue is like gaming events, at least from my experience at my school, gaming events are still relatively new. So they understand if like a breakdancing club wants to breakdance at a ballroom for like 6 hours, they totally know how to do that. But if there's like 3 computers in a room, they freak out or something. So
That's what
I
happened
def
with our first event too back in
yeah.
2010. I know they didn't want us touching
Hmm.
anything, even though most of my staff had more knowledge than they did.
Yeah.
And we're trying to convince them, like, hey, you really don't need to lay down the power strips and charge us $200 for it. You
Yeah, yeah.
know? Yeah, I agree with you, Tim. Just talk to them lots. Talk to the admins that
Hmm.
are at the university. I know we have a building or like an office that's called Events and Conferences, and they
Hmm.
basically are the ones that take like all the reservations and do all of the prepping for the rooms. So talk to them lots.
And also, totally lost my train of thought. So sorry.
Yeah, talk to them like
Yeah.
even if they're not going to do that much for you, make sure you talk to them so they like the building's open and stuff.
Yeah.
If they
Oh,
don't talk to you, like really talk to them because
yeah.
you need them. Like you really need them.
Oh yeah, what I was gonna say is make sure you plan like everything is planned and written down somewhere. And like if you ever find yourself where you're just like planning it in your mind, you need to write down I feel like you really need to write down and type up everything in a proposal. Because things that are obvious to you won't be obvious to someone else. Like, say your grand finals is a best of 7 and you need to get out of, the place in an hour. Like what would you do in that scenario? Like you have to write down oops. Okay, if you have to leave at midnight, it's 11 p.m. and your grand finals of League of Legends is a best of 7. How are you going to convince the people? How are you convincing the people to let you stay the extra hour? Because also another thing to keep in mind is if you actually overstay your welcome, it's like really expensive per hour to have people stay there. So that's a really big thing to look out for. Yeah, hold on. I'll pick up my mouse.
I know we stayed a little late because we had some issues starting up. The university actually, we paid $400 to have them help set up our internet because they required it from us this time
Yeah.
around, and they actually didn't even do their job. So we started like almost 2 hours late because my team was sitting there looking through the phone books. Like the tech team was frantic. They were looking through the phone book to find this guy because it was supposed to be set up and ready to go, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
And everything was closed. Yeah, they called him, and he finally got someone out to us, and everything got fixed. But yeah, we ended up going over because of starting around like an hour and a half to 2 hours late. We went over by about an hour or two. So we ended up having to pay like 400 something for each night that that we went over, or like for every hour that we went over, or something of that sort. It's a lot of money.
Wow. So I mean, there's kind of been a hidden theme in this discussion we've been having, is things that can go right and things that can go wrong. So I think everyone likes a bit of chaos. So I think we can all imagine how a good LAN would go. Everyone shows up on time, checks in, tournament finishes on time, you pack up, and everything's good to go. Like, I think everyone, yeah, it never happens, first of all. I think everyone in their mind has that going swell, but I think let's talk about some things that we've run into that just went horribly, horribly wrong and how we dealt with it. So I guess I have a bad habit of just blocking these things from my memory, so I'm gonna pass it to one of you guys to just start. So let's say like walking to the day of, like, what are some things that immediately, like, a circuit blew out or like the internet wasn't working the day of your event?
Sure, I can start.
All right.
We got there, and the sound system just didn't work. So I think what we ended up doing is we maxed out laptop speakers somehow.
Nice.
And then we had really, really loud laptop speakers, and we had a program to increase the volume on the laptop itself, so everything played loud.
Very nice.
So that worked. We also tried using a paperclip to get through the lock, but that didn't work.
And that's when you were locked out, right?
So for lockdown, we just called someone in and had a key,
Okay.
and then we held the door. And then after we got in, we just had someone hold the door open.
Nice.
That worked.
All right, Evva, what awesome little miss do you have for us?
Oh man, I kind of want to start from like back in 2010 at the 2v2. I think one of the weirdest things that did happen was we had, for the 2v2, we had actually everyone fill things out on sheets of paper. So they signed up on sheets of paper, essentially, and a lot of people like lied about where they were ranked at the time in 2v2 with their partner, so we had to like go in and look at it, and then having to like contact people when they had lied was kind of annoying. And of course, like the whole internet thing for the Midwest Meltdown was really terrible. There was also another thing with the Midwest Meltdown when we had a room booked and then found out that it actually wasn't booked. Like, we looked on the calendar, and even though we got a confirmation, it was booked, and then it wasn't booked. And we were already planning for one location and had to switch to a completely new location. Oh yeah, there was actually one time too where our internet got shut down completely because the Microsoft Store was the sponsor of ours, and they have a program that's actually on their laptops and on their laptops that I think is managed straight from their central location, like from corporate or something of that sort. So there's some sort of program that the U caught, and they thought it was some sort of like crazy virus that was going to infiltrate the university and steal all of their monies, you know? So we got shut down temporarily, and that port was blocked off completely. Yeah, just a bunch of random crap.
There was one. I want to bring this up because not a lot of people know about this, and I definitely didn't know about it, but event insurance is like so important to have. What I had to do with that is actually just like send an email to if you have a third-party corporate sponsor, there's all this legal talk in an email you just kind of send off, and they have to like provide a certificate to you, or you have to like get a certificate from the university, which is this other involved process, which probably varies from university to university, but it's definitely like the 8th level of hell, like doing that. But I worked with one event where the event was canceled 3 times because, like, the day of, it was canceled 3 times the day of because of issues of event insurance. So that was fun, to say the least. So I didn't deal with it directly, but just looking on the guy's face who had to deal with it, it didn't look fun at all. So yeah, that's a little tidbit.
I forgot too to mention that, oh, sorry for cutting you off, Tim.
No problem.
It just came up in my mind that a lot of organizations, I think, forget that a lot of these games are owned by publishers, and they actually have to get rights to play these games publicly, or else you could face a lawsuit if they're vicious. You know, of course, that is most likely not going to happen, but you definitely have to register all tournaments and events and get some sort of legal document / license from the publisher that it's okay for you to play that game publicly for X amount of dates. Yeah. That's the same thing with showing a movie publicly as well. On a large scale. You actually have, most of the time they make you pay royalty fees to show those movies publicly, but luckily we're in esports and they're nice and they want to get their game out there, so we don't have to deal with those fees.
Yeah, it's probably the most important thing that we kind of skipped over, but it's actually super, super important. Is like licensing your thing with Blizzard. That's not because they want to control. Yeah, and Riot actually too. It's not because they want to control everything. It's, well, that's arguable. I wrote this huge weird paper, so my brain is like all conspiracy theory right now. But it's because